Good morning, Ms. Nurhayati, and everyone who is going to watch this video. Welcome to Poetry Appreciation Midterm Project with me, Marcelinus Banu from class 33-4A07 with my name 33220073. And today I want to talk about poetry appreciation. Um, this is our contents for today. So first will be the introduction, instruction, the poem, discussion, conclusion, and then closing. Introduction. Poetry is a word of great meaning, a word that contains a great creation inside it. And today we want to explore the beauty and the power. Today we'll journey through the intricate landscape of the types of poetry, the voice, the tone, and the poetry itself, the hyperbole, metaphor, personification, imagery, rhyme, alliteration, assonance, rhythm, and meter that the poet weaves us into verses. The instructions for today. So analyze the following poems, paying close attention to the elements of poetry discussed in meeting 1 until 6. Consider how the elements contribute to the overall meaning and emotional impact of the poem. The analysis include number 1 is types of poetry, which is narrative and lyrics. Number 2 is the voice and tone of the poems. Number 3 is figure of speech, the hyperbole, metaphor, personification, imagery, etc. Number 4 is rhyme, alliteration, assonance, rhythm, and meter. Now we get into the poem. There are two poems for today. So the first poem will be The Cry of a Dreamer. I am tired of planning and toiling in the crowded hives of men, heart weary of building and spoiling and building again. And I long for the dear old river, where I dream my youth away. For a dreamer lives forever, and a toiler dies in a day. I am sick of the showy seeming of a life that is half a lie, of the faces lined with scheming in the throng that hurries by. From the sleepless thought's endeavor, I would go where the children play. For a dreamer lives forever, and a thinker dies in a day. I can feel no pride, but pity for the burdens the rich endure. There is nothing sweet in the city, but the patient lives of the poor. Oh, the little hands too skillful, and the child mind choked with weeds. The daughter's heart grown wilful, and the father's heart that bleeds. No, no, from the street's rude bustle, from the trophies of mart and stage, I would fly the woods' low rustle and the meadows' kindly page. And now for the next poem. There is no death. There is no death. The stars go down to rise upon some other shore, and bright in heaven's jeweled crown they shine forevermore. There is no death. The forest leaves convert to life the viewless air. The rocks disorganize to feed the hungry moths they bear. There is no death. The dust we tread shall change beneath the summer shower to golden grain, or mellowed fruit, or rainbow tinted flower. There is no death. The leaves may fall, and flowers may fade away and pass away, they only wait through wintry hours, the warm sweet breath of May. There is no death. The choicest gift that heaven hath kindly lent to earth, ever first to seek again the country of their birth. and all things that for growth of joy are worthy of our love or care, whose loss has left us desolate, are safely garnered there. Through life becomes desert waste. We know its fairest sweets. We know its fairest sweetest flowers, transplanted into paradise, adorned in so bowers. So that the second poem. Now we get into the next discussion. So these are the discussions for today. The general discussions we will discuss for today's project is number one, the type of poetry, narrative or lyrics, the voice and tone of the poems, figure of speech, rhyme, alliteration, assonance, rhythm, and meter. Number one is the type of poetry. In this discussion, we have two poetries available for us to discuss. What kind of poetry types does these poems use? There are two types of poetry: narrative poetry and lyric poetry. Narrative poetry is a type of poetry that usually emphasizes actions or plot, more like telling a story. It uses various forms, from rhyming schemes and rhyme to presents a story involving one or more characters and events. It has its own story, characters, dialogue, conflicts, plot settings, a beginning and ending, in which concludes and summarizes the story. And then we have lyric poetry, which is a type of poetry that expresses personal and emotional feelings. It uses and or usually written as a songs, sonnets, or order of praise, celebrations. Lyric poems are especially arousing personal participations of reader and in stirring their sensations, feelings, and emotions. So the poems in this project, The Cry of a Dreamer, uses the lyric type. The reason of which is because it's describing the emotion of the writer in each lyrics. Mainly because it used I, it describes the writer's own feeling and emotion. As for the second poem, There Is No Death, it's also used the lyric type because it's also describing the writer's emotional feeling. The writer's picturing that there are no death, but also saying that the good will go to a better place one day. Number two is the voice and the tones of the poem. Voice and tone of the poem. So voice of the poem is a media to convey the poem's tone, which is it implies attitude towards its subject. It uses to designate it to creating or ordering artistic intelligence that we recognize behind any narrative persona, also can be referred to as the writer's attitudes toward his or her subjects or readers. They can use various voice, satirical, patronizing, even humorous. Tone of the poem is an abstraction from the details of the poem's language. Tone is a voice that has been conveyed and implies its attitude towards the subject. The writers of all the speakers' attitude towards its subject. Number three is figure of speech. We have hyperbole, metaphor, personifications, and imagery. Number one is the hyperbole. They are the example of the of the hyperbole from the two poems. I'm going to give two examples. From The Cry of a Dreamer, we have number one is from the dialogue, of course. And a toiler dies in a day. This line exaggerates of how short and meaningless a laborer's life is by comparing it to a dreamer's seemingly endless existence. It highlights the notion that while dreamers have external vitality and importance, laborers lead brief, empty lives. Number 2 is a thinker dies in a day. Explanation. Like the example before, this sentence emphasizes on how short a thinker's life is and implies that intellectual pursuit result in an early death. It draws attention to the toll that continuous reflections and analysis have on a person by drawing a comparison between the transient character or intellectual pursuit and the enduring quality of dreams. Now for the second poem, There is No Death. Number 1 is to shine forevermore. The sentence exaggerates on how long the stars will exist, implying that they will shine indefinitely. It highlights the idea that although appearing to vanish from the night sky, heavenly bodies remain everlasting and unchanging. And for the second example is There is No Death. From the poems itself, the repeated assertion that there is no death throughout the poem is hyperbolic in nature, emphasizing that the poet's belief in the continuity of life beyond physical demise. It exaggerates the idea that death is merely a transition to another form of existence rather than an end. So the second part is metaphor. These are the example. From The Cry of a Dreamer, number 1 is in the crowded hives of men. This metaphor highlights the hectic, buzzing and structured aspect of urban life by equating human civilizations with beehives. It suggests that individuals collaborate closely, akin to bees in a colony, in order to accomplish its objective. Example number 2 is And the Meadow's Kindly Page. This metaphor compares a meadow's serene and welcoming qualities to a page in a book or other written work. It implies that spending time in meadows is calming experience similar to reading a calming story. It portrays nature as a place of comfort, peace, and rejuvenation. This is from the second poem, Heaven Jeweled Crown. Explanation. This metaphor highlights the majesty and brightness of the stars in heaven by comparing the celestial realm to a crown covered in diamonds. It symbolizes the stars' everlasting brilliance and says that they are magnificent and priceless, like gems on a crown. Number 2 is the rocks disorganized for 2 feet. This metaphor links to chaos, to the disintegration and decomposition of rocks. Given that the moss is growing on rocks, it symbolizes the cycle of life and regeneration and implies a change from solid, stable forms to a condition of disarray. This is the third part, personifications. From The Cry of a Dreamer, the daughter's heart grown willful and the father's heart that bleeds. Explanation. The father's and the daughter's heart are brought to life. The father's heart is said to bleed, signifying emotional sorrow or suffering, whereas the daughter's heart is described as willful, suggesting stubbornness or defiance. Through attributing human emotions to the heart, the poet highlights the challenge and tensions that people face in their family. For the second examples, we have And the Meadow's Kindly Page. Meadows receive the human's attribute of kindness from the usage of the term kindly. The speaker is given the impression that meadows are kind and inviting as a result of these personifications, as though they are extending warm invitation. This is from the second point. Heaven jeweled crown, same as before. Explanation: personified as jeweled crown, heaven is describing as having grandeur and majesty. The poet conjures up a vision of divine monarchy and everlasting magnificence by giving heaven human-like traits, such as adorning a crown, as donning a crown. Example number 2: the rocks disorganized feet. This personification of rocks represent their active disintegration or breakdown to supply food for the moss that grows on them. This personification conveys a sense of action or purpose to the natural world, as if the rocks are deliberately supporting other living creatures. Number 4, part 4, imagery from the Cry of a Dreamer. In the crowded hives of men. Explanation: this term compares metropolitan civilization to a colony of bees and evokes images of buzzing human activity. A sense of activity, order, and a group labor in a crowded metropolitan settings are conveyed by the image. Example number 2, I would fly to the woods, low rustle, and the meadows kindly pace. These words bring up the peace and splendor of the environment. The phrase meadows kindly pace evokes visions of expansive fields dotted with vibrant flowers, whereas the phrase woods, low rustle conveys the soft sounds of leaf rustling in the breeze, which they produce a tranquil, serene, and natural sensation of connection when they combine. From the second part, there is no death, the hungry moss they bear. It emphasized the interdependence of all living things by painting a clear picture of cyclical cycles and natural symbiosis, in which rocks disintegrate to support the growth of moss. They only wait through wintry hours. The second example, they only wait through wintry hours, the warm, sweet breath of May. Explanation: with its gentle warmth and pleasant air, springtime is brought to life in its artwork. The sharp contrast between the grim and freezing wintry hours and the hope for growth and renewal that May brings present striking pictures of seasonal change and rebirth. So the conclusion, we've looked at, so we get into the conclusion. We've looked at The Cry of a Dreamer by Edgar A. Guest and There Is No Death by John Lucky McCreary, both of which deal with the fundamental topics of existence, death, and the enduring nature of life. Both poets create tremendous emotions and prompt serious contemplation on the human condition by masterfully employing literal methods such as metaphor, personification, and imagery. In The Cry of a Dreamer, we reflect the need of simplicity, purity, and connection to nature amidst the complication of urban life. He presents a portrayal of yearning for freedom from society's expectation, seeking peace and rebirth in the beauty of nature. Meanwhile, McCreary's There Is No Death explore into the concept of eternal life, and continuity after physical death. He communicates a message of optimism and reassurance using metaphors, personification, and rich imagery, emphasizing the interdependence of all living things, as well as nature enduring cycles. Both poems provide significant insights into human experience, prompting readers to consider the fleeting of essence of life and timeless beauty found in the world around them. Guess and Creary's evocative language and timeless subject remind us of poetry's enduring capacity to explain life's secrets and motivate us to treasure every minute we have. So this is the closing. In a world where the passage of time might feel relentless and finality unavoidable, McCreary's poetry serves as a gentle reminder that life, in all of its manifestations, exists beyond the confines of mortality. Through the elegance of his words, and the strength of his imagery, he inspires us to embrace the eternal rhymes or rhythms of nature and find peace in the never-ending cycle of life, where there is no death, just transformation and renewal. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invisible summer, as I quoted from Albert Camus. And poetry, in the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, it takes its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility. From William Wordsworth, nature always wears the colors of the spirit. From Ralph Waldo Emerson. As we come to an end our journey through The Cry of a Dreamer by Edgar Rice Wells and There Is No Death by John Lucky McCreary, this quote strikes like a deep chord. They remind us, even in the coldness of time, there is still warmth within us. The desire for simplicity, purity, and connections with nature. Poetry, with its ability to elicit strong emotions and encapsulate the essence of life, acts as a beacon of light in the darkest time, which Guess's image and McCreary's reassurance of us remind us that despite the complexity of life, there is beauty, tenacity, and endless birth. So thank you. So that's all for the for today's project. I hope everyone who watched enjoyed it. Really sorry. My biggest apologize if there's any inconvenience. So